Do you want to just go through like the bullet points that you sent me?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'll be going through on the chat and stuff, and I might touch on the Ironman challenge near the end.
Okay.
I think that's quite cool to touch on.
Okay.
So we're now joined by Mark, who works and has his own store over on the internet, basically, and it's Type 1 Clothing Co., which he thinks amazing. But it's not just that. We'll talk a bit more about what Mark gets up to and stuff later on. But would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, so my name's Mark. I'm 20 years old. I was diagnosed with diabetes on March 17th, 2013, so almost 8 years ago. Um, and I own a company called Type 1 Clothing Co. I also work with my brother. He owns an electric skateboard shop. So I do that during the day, and then I kind of run my business at night, and then like sometimes like throughout the day. Um, and I'm really into like triathlons. I used to competitive swim like in high school. Um, and like with like diabetes and stuff, I like always thought that like I would have to stop like doing like swimming and all this triathlons and stuff. And it wasn't until like my late teens that I realized that I wouldn't have to stop doing all of these things. I would just need to like get better control of my blood sugars to be able to do them, because like at first I would go low almost every single time I had to like do any type of working out and stuff. But it took a lot of trial and error to kind of figure out how I would need to um, get my blood sugars so I could be able to do all of that stuff. So I would have to um, like uh, use like temp basals and stuff when I was still on the pump, or I would have to just get like my long acting insulin just down a couple of units when I knew that I had big workouts and stuff. And then most of the time when I'm like really active and stuff, my insulin sensitivity goes down. So I would have to take a lot less insulin for meals and stuff before workouts and all that. But I'm a big believer on you don't have to stop doing anything you want just because you have diabetes. Um, all of those things, yes, they may be a little harder, and you have to um, keep closer eye on your blood sugars, but you definitely can do anything you want to do.
Are you trying to remember life before being Type 1 as well?
Yeah, I remember some of it. I was 12 and a half when I got it. Um, and I remember when I first got it, like I knew nothing about diabetes. Like I honestly thought my life was over. Like I was so ignorant to like what it was, just because I didn't the only person I knew with diabetes was my grandpa, and he had type 2, and he never really took good care of himself at first. So I just like thought I would have to eat vegetables and like not do any physical activity ever. Um so like I really didn't know what it was. And like the doctors when I first got it weren't the best at explaining what it was. So they like I went to the hospital, and um just because I wasn't feeling very well and I was like kind of hyperventilating, and my mom didn't really know what was going on. And I went in and my blood sugar was 1147, and the doctors were like so confused how I wasn't like in a coma, like, and I was still talking, like I was still pretty much fine. Like obviously I wasn't fine, but I wasn't like in a coma. And um they kind of just told me I had type 1 diabetes, like I had the common cold. And like they're like, all right, we're gonna admit you and you're gonna stay here a week. And I was like, wait, what? And they didn't explain much, like not until like they had like a nutritionist come up and see me in like the hospital room and stuff. But yeah, when I first got diagnosed, they just like they were just very nonchalant about it. It was very odd to me, but yeah, life before was, I mean, it was pretty normal. Like I had a pretty normal childhood. Um, it was a lot easier, I can say that, because I didn't have to deal with like counting carbs and all like the thousands of decisions I make every day because based on my blood sugar. Um, but now, I mean, it's been 8 years, so like it's kind of just how my life is. Like it's pretty normal to me now. Like I don't really think anything of it day to day. Like obviously, there's bad days, and sometimes I wish I didn't have diabetes, but I think that's every diabetic. Um, but I mean, yeah, it's pretty normal to me now.
I want to touch a little bit on about your diagnosis story as well.
Yeah. So the week leading up to my diagnosis, I was obviously peeing a lot, and like I was always thirsty and stuff like that, just like the normal symptoms of diabetes. And like my family would always joke like, "Oh, that's a symptom of diabetes," and I'm like, "Oh, I don't have diabetes. Like, I'm not overweight." And like that's how ignorant I was to like what diabetes was. I thought it was just type 2 and that was it. Like I didn't realize that you could have type 1. So like it never even crossed my mind that what that was even like an issue. And then um every day like leading up to that week, I just got progressively like more tired and tired and tired. And at the time I was competitive swimming, and I think that's why I was able to get up to 1147 without like being in a coma, because like I would work off a lot of my like my blood sugars were probably high for like 3 or 4 weeks, but because I was swimming every day for 2 3 hours a day, I think I would get to practice probably around 5 600, and then by the time I was done it would be back down to like 200. But then I don't have practices on Sunday, and I ate like so. I remember on March 17th, because it was St. Patrick's Day, we had a big party, and I ate so many carbs. Like we had a huge pasta dinner, and then I went to McDonald's and got like a Shamrock Shake and like all this like absolute crap food. And then that's what sent me over the edge, and I didn't swim that day. So I think that's what kind of made me go to the hospital, because I was just feeling so crappy. And I remember like when we were out to dinner, right before I went to the hospital, like I took one bite of my food and I was starving, but like I took one bite and then I just started like breaking down and crying. And I was like, I don't want to eat this. Like, I can't eat this anymore. And my mom just thought I was going to throw up because I was just embarrassed because I was going to get sick. But like, I literally could not put any more carbs into my body or else I was going to die. Like, that's what it felt like. Um, and with that blood sugar, I mean, it was pretty close to me dying.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, then we just went to the hospital and then they tested my blood sugar, and then the blood sugar, like the meter said high. The number was too high where the meter wouldn't even read it. So they had to get like this industrial meter thing that they test a lot more blood with. And then they finally came back with like the number of 1147. And like my mom was a nurse like a long time ago, so she knew like how high that number was. And when they told that to her before they even said I had diabetes, she looked at me and she's like, "I'm surprised you're not dead." And like it was really scary.
And have you ever like had any challenges since being diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic?
um there's been times where, oh, here's one. So senior year of high school, probably about 3.5 to 4 years ago, I woke up. I don't remember this, but I woke up and my mom woke me up for school, and I was late because like I didn't wake up to my alarm, and I went to the bathroom and I shut the door, and my mom said from the other room she just heard a loud like boom, and she like ran into the bathroom, and I was face first into like the bathtub. Like I fell into the bathtub and I was just seizing, and um she said there was like a lot of blood in the bathtub because like when you seize, like you bite your tongue. Um and and then like she called 911, and then they like asked if I was breathing, and then like when you seize, like you stop breathing. um and like she said no, and like she actually thought I was dead, and they were like, no, no, like when you seize, like you stop breathing but he'll start breathing again. And then I did, and then the ambulance came and they tested my blood sugar, and it was like 19 or something crazy like that. And so I missed the entire day of school, and then I like went to the hospital and got like my blood sugar back up. And then like 3 hours later, I had swim practice, and I went to swim practice after that, which was crazy. And I don't even know why I did that, but yeah, that was definitely one of the scariest moments of having diabetes for sure. But ever since then, that's why I got Dexter, because she was so scared of me going away to school. Um, and like not having anyone there to like look after me. So that's when she looked into getting like my diabetic alert dog. Um, and then he had to get trained, and then like I got him a year later after that. But yeah, that was probably one of the scariest times like post diagnosis that I've had, um, after diabetes. But yeah.
And what was like school like when you was younger, being type 1 diabetic at school? 'Cause I know that can be traumatic at
I
times.
remember the school nurses just like didn't know anything about diabetes. Like when I was in middle school, they had like I wasn't allowed to give myself my own shots for whatever reason. Like I don't know why they trusted some school nurse that knows nothing about the disease rather than a kid that's had it his whole life. But like I remember like 15 minutes before like lunch, I would have to go to the um nurse's office, and like I'd have like my lunch, and like my parents would write how many carbs was like on in the lunch, like on my bag. And then like they would have to just like watch me take my own insulin, and then I would just go eat. Like it was very strange to me. And then so that was in middle school, and then in high school, I was on a pump at that time, so like I didn't need to go to the nurse's office. So that like high school was pretty normal to me. Like I just took care of myself like how I normally do at home. Like um but yeah, I mean I didn't really have any issues with school. Like I did have like a 504. I don't know if you guys know what that is in the UK, but it's like a thing where you're allowed to like miss as much school as you want, and still graduate, and like teachers can't say no if you have to go to the bathroom. Like you just have the all these like little things that you're allowed to do at school that like some like people that don't have diabetes like aren't allowed to do. Like I was allowed to have my phone on me during like tests, because like my Dexcom app and everything like that. um but for like the most part, like I think high school was pretty, I mean, like normal to me, as much as it could have been. Like I didn't really have any like diabetes related stuff. Um, but I like as like in high school and stuff, like everyone knew that I was diabetic. Like my license plate on my car says diabetic. Like I was pretty out in the open about it for sure. Um, in middle school, I wasn't at all. Like I wouldn't tell a single person, but once I got to high school, like I kind of started embracing it, and pretty much everyone knew me as the kid with diabetes, like really. So, um, so yeah, I think middle school was probably the hardest, but that was when I first was diagnosed. So I was just kind of getting used to having the disease.
And as you mentioned there, I think a lot of it comes down to education to other people as well, especially with
Hmm.
diabetes. Is so much trial and error with everything. Every
Yeah.
what we do is decisions we make just by the factor of numbers and all that you've mentioned. And I think it
Hmm.
still lacks education from all
Yeah.
factors so much. And have you had any changes to your insulin since being type 1?
Probably about 95 times. I was on Novolog for some time. I switched back to pens, and then I went back to a pump, so they put me back on Novolog, and then my insurance didn't cover Novolog, so I went to Admelog. And then when I got back off the pump, because the reason why I switched I was originally on pens, then I went to a pump, and then the reason why I switched back to pens was because that pump broke, and my insurance wouldn't cover a new pump until the warranty period was over, which the warranty period is over in March. So hopefully I get another pump then, but that's why I'm on shots now. But from that change from like shots to pump to shots, I had to change from Novolog to Admelog. And then my long acting also changed from Lantus to Levemir to, I think I'm taking Basaglar now. Um, but yeah, I've had so many changes just because like every year the insurance covers different things. So like I always just take what they cover. Um, and I haven't really had any issues changing insulins. Um, I know some people do. Some people react differently to all kinds of insulin. So it definitely can be hard to constantly have to change, but I'm very lucky and I don't really have those issues of my blood sugars being affected by different insulin. But I know it can be hard for some people for sure.
And definite. And what would be your tips for other type 1 diabetics out there or caregivers?
Um, I would say that like it gets easier. Like, well, diabetes is hard for anyone, but the amount of experience you have in knowing like what different foods affect you, um, what different exercises affect you, like you'll start to realize patterns and trends of, oh, if I run 3 miles, I need to do this before, or something like that. And like it's really important just to stay positive and not get too discouraged because everyone's going to have bad days, obviously. But you're in it for life, like everyone is. So there's no reason to beat yourself up about one day when you have 364 more days that year and your whole life the rest of the time. Um, and it's just important just to take those days and learn from them rather than just constantly stressing about them. Because if any diabetic, you told them that they were going to be perfect straight line 100 for the rest of their life, everyone would laugh in your face. It's not like that ever. um, and there's days when I wake up and I'm 45, and there's days when I wake up when I'm 350. But um, it's just important just to keep on going and keep doing the same thing that you're doing and just don't get discouraged.
And what's the one bit of advice you'd give another newly diagnosed type 1 to help them along with their diagnosis journey?
What did you say?
And what's the one bit of advice you'd give a newly diagnosed diabetic to help them with the diagnosis journey?
Um, that you can eat whatever you want. All of the nurses and doctors always told me, you eat 3 meals a day, no more than 80 carbs per meal. That's what they told me when I first got diagnosed. And I lived by that for probably 6 months to a year before I realized that was absolute crap. Like, people like to snack. Like, you can take insulin for a snack. And I never really realized that. And it took me a while to realize that. And I think that just stems back to the education of diabetes needs to be a little bit better. Um, Not even for just people that don't have it, just for like um, medical practices. Like, there's a lot of nurses and doctors that just don't really know much about diabetes, and it affects millions of people. Like, it's one of the most common like chronic illnesses in the world, and it just amazes me how many people don't really know much about it. Like, I was at a just a standard doctor's appointment, not like an endocrinologist or anything, but just a standard doctor's appointment. And my doctor really told me, I don't know much about diabetes, so you're on your own with that one. And she's a doctor. Like, I don't know. I think it's crazy that there's so many people out there that just don't know about diabetes when they're in the medical field, and that also goes into like people know nothing about it when they don't have it, because like no one's ever taught about diabetes unless someone in your family or you have it. Like, you think that people just can't eat sugar and that's it, like, or they just have to take insulin and they're fine. Like, they don't know any of the complications that come with it, all of the day-to-day decisions that come with it. um, and I think that if people actually were taught like how diabetes works, a lot more people would be better off. Um, and yeah.
And what was the positives you've encountered since being type 1?
Um, I've met so many people through social media like yourself, um, that have been so encouraging and supportive throughout my entire journey of my clothing company and just even personally. Um, I don't think I've met a single person with type 1 diabetes that wasn't supportive of like what I'm going through, because we all are going through the same thing. And it's just really amazing to be surrounded by so many people that like cheer you on the sidelines. Um, and like, honestly, every single type 1 diabetic I've met has been nothing but nice to me. It's amazing how like positive this community is for what we're dealing with, because I completely understand why some type 1s aren't positive. It's hard. Like, it's a 24/7 365-day job, and it's draining at times. But all the positivity around everyone like on social media and stuff really helps you push through that. um, and I like to surround myself with those kind of people just because it is a lot easier to know that all these people are also going through the same thing and they're so positive, which makes you positive, and it's just kind of a snowball effect of positivity, which I really love.
And you mentioned before that you've been on the pump and also the pens and the shots. Do you find your glucose levels more controlled more on the pump than the shots? Or kind of
Um,
same?
I think, see, I don't think I have a very good sample size of either one, just because now that I'm on the shots, I take my diabetes management a lot more serious. When I was on the pump through 16 to 18, I like I was in a very like hard stage in my life, and I just really didn't care about diabetes. Like, I wouldn't test as much, and I just kind of would give myself some insulin, and I wouldn't really carb count. I would just kind of eyeball everything. And so I think I have better control now, obviously, but when I was on a pump, like I think I would have had better control if I actually kept a closer eye on it. But I think I was just so burnt out from everything going on in my life that diabetes was like the last thing I wanted to deal with. Now looking back, I know that was the wrong decision to make. Um, but but yeah, I think I would be extremely controlled on the pump if I would have actually taken care of myself better. But as of now, I'm better controlled on shots for sure.
And physical well-being is obviously important for yourself. And as you mentioned there, you've done a lot of triathlons.
Hmm.
And next week you've got the video where 4 miles over 48 hours, which
Yeah.
I think is incredible being a type 1 diabetic. Why do you think, what inspired you to get involved with stuff like that?
I think like endurance training and stuff like that just kind of puts me out of like my comfort zone. And I think it really helps like my mental health. Um, it helps me kind of forget about everything that's going on in the world, like especially now, with everyone locked down and everything. Um, I really think that like all this training kind of puts a sense of um like habit forming in my life. So I've kind of gotten into this routine of just like working out and being very active, which gets like endorphins running, and like I feel better every time I end up working out. Um, there's not been very many times that I've worked out that I've felt worse than starting. Obviously, my body is sometimes very sore, but mentally, I always feel better every time. And I think that was just kind of an outlet to um, kind of control what like is going on in my life. And I was like a competitive swimmer my entire life. Um, and like my dad did like started doing triathlons when I was really young, and I thought they were so cool. Um, and then I started them probably when I was like 10 or 11, and I would go around like the entire like US doing all these triathlons when I was really young. And I would win a lot of them, and like all of the race directors were like, "You need to keep doing this. Like, you're really good." And and then when I got diagnosed, I kind of took a break from them for a couple of years because I wasn't really comfortable doing triathlons and having diabetes at the time. Um, and then like one day, I don't know if it was progression over time or it was just like a flip of the switch, but I was just like, all right, I need to do these again. Um, so I like started training again and everything. And then at like 17 and a half, I knew that I could do like Ironmans and stuff when I was 18. So I signed up for an Ironman when like after my 18th birthday. Um, and then I did my first Ironman on no training, which was not a good choice at all. I barely finished, but yeah, that was a little rough.
The main thing is you've actually finished, sorry. That's the main thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And what was it like doing your challenge for next week's video? The 48 hours?
So the challenge that I did was run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So that was a total of 48 miles in 44 or 48 hours. Um, that was very mentally exhausting um, because the 4 miles took me around 35 to 50 minutes. It took me around 35 minutes in the beginning and closer to an hour towards the end because I was so tired. But you only have 4 hours in between each run. So I would run for 35 to 50 minutes and then I'd have about 3 hours and 15 minutes until I had to run again. And I always had to eat because of my blood sugars. And so after like I ate and kind of calmed down a little bit, I only really had about 2.5 hours in between each run. So I would be sleeping in like 90-minute increments, like throughout the entire day, every 4 hours. So like I didn't get much sleep, um, like much good sleep. Like it was just kind of power naps throughout 48 hours. And the craziest thing to me was I ate like 5 to 600 carbs, and I didn't take a single bit of insulin the entire 48 hours. And my blood sugars were pretty stable. Like I would eat and then it would go up to about like 180, 190. And then when I ran, it would come back down to like 110. So like I was staying, it was kind of like a roller coaster, as in like I would be eating and then running, coming back down, eating, running, coming back down. But I knew that I had to start all my runs a little bit elevated, just because when I run, my blood sugar drops about 70 to 80 points over 4 miles. So I knew I couldn't start at like 120 because then I would be 50 when I got back from the run. So I had to just continue eating, and I would eat like 60 to 70 carbs, or not 60. I would eat like 40 to 50 carbs in between each run. And that would just like kind of make my blood sugars, like my average blood sugar throughout the whole time was like 135, but it was like 190, 110, 190, 120, 190. Like I think it shot up to like 215 one time, but I knew like that it would be okay because I needed it to start that high, um, which it's a bit elevated for some people. But I tend to do better when I start exercise higher, because my blood sugar drops so much when I exercise. And I was a little scared of like overnights, like because usually when I do cardio, it like the bulk of the drop happens like after I'm done. Like an hour after my exercise is when I really drop. So I just had to like sip Gatorade pretty much the entire time. I probably got about 3 to 4 hours of sleep each day on top of running 24 miles each day. So my body took an absolute beating, but I'm just glad that I did it.
And what's your future ambitions?
So in the future, I want to make my own race series, like similar to Ironman. I really want to be a race director for like a new race series that like funds like type 1 diabetes foundations. And I want like my clothing company to like be the like brand ambassador for like the packet pickup, like you get like a t-shirt for a race or something. I really want my like clothing company and like this like triathlon brand that I want to make like kind of come together and donate like a bunch of money for diabetes, um, for like JDRF or like the American Diabetes Association, um, or like Diabetes International, like all three of those. um, and So like I wanted to do that. That's a very long term plan because it takes a lot of money to put races like that together. Um, but I really want to do something like that to kind of give back to the diabetes community even more than I am now. Because like I love meeting people with diabetes. Like I think that's so awesome. And like I really want to just continue to help out newly diagnosed people, to let them know like, hey, like you can do this. Like just because you have diabetes, you don't have to like stop doing um, any like physical activity, any like traveling. Because like I know a lot of diabetics that don't travel because they're scared of like getting insulin like in a different country or something. And it shouldn't have to be that way. You should never live your life in fear. And I think that having diabetes, yeah, it makes stuff a little harder, and you have to kind of um, think about things that other people don't. But it definitely shouldn't be a limit on like how you live your life and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much what I want to do, like long term. Um, but yeah,
And did you see the advert? This is getting your thoughts now on the new advert for Dexcom G6 for the Super Bowl.
the Nick Jonas one.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Like especially the thing where he's like, we went to Mars and you still have to like finger stick. I thought that was pretty funny. Um, but it's definitely like a problem. Like people aren't getting them because they don't want them. It's like a bunch of insurance stuff that people can't get them. Like they cost like $300 a box. So it's definitely a struggle for like the average person to get them, and I think that needs to change. Like there's no way that those Dexcoms cost that much to make. They can't be. It's a little plastic piece that has a Bluetooth transmitter. Like there's absolutely no way they cost that much. um, and I think just making them more accessible to like the average person is like very useful. And I also saw this like trend of like non-diabetics getting CGMs because they think they're cool and putting them in their body. And that made me very angry. There's no reason that you should be wasting a CGM if you're not diabetic. But I just thought I would bring that up because I thought about it the other day and it is just absolutely insane to me. Like some of these celebrities are just getting them just because they want to see, and it's just crazy to me. If like,
It is mental when you've seen that. Like I've seen it on social media, but I think
mhm.
it just proves that even non-diabetics still get the waves. It's not a flat line, even like you mentioned. They're not staying up for
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah, for sure. No, like when like a couple of weeks ago, actually, I was just interested because I was eating lunch with my brother and he was like drinking a milkshake, and I was just interested. I wonder what your blood sugar would be right now. And I tested him and he was like 142. And I was like, wow, that seems really high to me for someone that doesn't have diabetes. And then like an hour went by and I tested him again and he was like 105. So like it's definitely not a straight line ever. Um, and when you eat something sugary, like your blood sugar spikes, but like the spike is only to like 142, and most diabetics would be thrilled to be at 142. Um, but yeah, it was very interesting to me to see that for sure.
It's a lot of, like we said, it's a lot of eye opening. I think, like we said before, it's a lot of trial and error.
Hmm.
What we do every day, and that's the extra 1,000 decisions we make. But even every day, it doesn't feel like 1,000 decisions. I think because we just get used to it.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem that lot, but every day it probably adds to that.
yeah,
Because every second you can look at your phone and see what your glucose readings are.
yeah.
And
Well,
then
and
sometimes
for people that don't have CGMs, it's
it is,
even more, it's a lot harder. You got to test your blood sugar 10, 15 times a day. And there's been times when I didn't have a CGM that there's no way I ever tested 10 to 15 times. Like it's just, it's difficult to sit down and do that. Like the diabetes burnout is real, and CGMs just make it that much easier to see the trends and stuff. And I think they need to be more accessible to everyone.
most definitely, especially for type 1s as well, for these CGMs, I think, because it's not just transforming people's lives, it also transforms people's diets and what they're eating, because
Yeah.
you can see clearly what the food intake's actually having on your glucose levels
Hmm.
since having that. So thank
Yeah.
you for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Do you have any more questions for me?
No, that's everything.
All right, cool.
Just